Welcome to The Happy Writer, a show about creating and sustaining a long-term author career. My name is Patty Jansen, writer of science fiction and fantasy. I've published independently since 2011. This show covers motivation, diversification, learning new skills, and your place in your career. Come on in and be happy. In episode 32 of The Happy Writer, I'm going to be talking about the services that I use to write and publish and that I see other people using. I'll be talking about software and subscriptions that I think can be useful to many writers. I'll be starting off with the actual writing and then going through the entire publishing process. I want to stress that I'm not being sponsored by any of these companies that provide the services, and that this is merely based on what I used myself and what I have seen other people use. There are no affiliate links or anything like that. Overall, I lean to the side of using as few paid services as possible. There is a lot more that you can spend your money on than what I mention here, and some of that you might even find useful. But I will be talking about what I think is the absolute minimum, and which services actually add to your ability to write and publish and sell books. So here goes. In the first place, there are the writing apps and software. Most people will use Word, but these days it comes as a subscription, and not all people like those. Also, Word has a huge number of functions that the vast majority of writers will never use. It's a big, demanding, complicated program. If you're just after an app to write, there are ones that are vastly more targeted to authors and take up less space on your computer. Some people use Google Docs, for example. It's free and web-based. When you have a Mac, it comes for free with Pages, which is a vastly slimmed-down, quite basic text editor that does absolutely everything a writer needs. It's free, it's always updated, and it even exports EPUB files. Many writers, however, use Scrivener. This is a custom-built program for writers and creators of text-based content. It has the capability to structure your manuscript into chapters and easily move them around. It stores your document into simple text files so you can access them with another program. It has an iOS app which allows you to write on your iPad or your phone, and I use this all the time. The Windows version is not quite as good as the Mac version. That mainly has to do with the spell check, which is native to the Mac operating system, but a separate function in Windows, which is also, when you use Windows, you have to enter a dictionary for each and every program you use. There are other programs like Ywriter, which is written by a friend of mine, Simon Haynes, in Western Australia, and is quite popular because it's very small and minimalistic. Once you have written your manuscript, you will need to edit it. Most editors work in Word, and if you choose Pages, you can also read and export to Word files, including comments. Google Docs can also read Word files. If you use Scrivener, you will need to export your file as Word file first. In fact, most of the apps that you can use to write will export in Word because it is a universally accepted format. If you wonder whether you can get by without a subscription to Word, I have done this since 2015. I do not have Word on any of my computers. I do have Scrivener, and Scrivener integrates with an app called ProWritingAid, which checks grammar and spelling. Scrivener already has a spell checker, but I've actually turned the spell checker on my computer off and just used the ProWritingAid one. Some people use Grammarly, but ProWritingAid is a lot more extensive. These apps do not replace an editor, and you cannot rely on them 100% to get everything right, because they don't. But they do highlight parts of the manuscript where maybe rewording is in order if the program found it hard to pass your sentence. You will still need a fairly solid understanding of grammar to be able to understand and fully use this program. But it also makes suggestions about style and wordiness of sentences, since this can really slow down the pace of a manuscript. It's always good to cut words you don't need. When you get to publishing, you will need something that formats your file. These days, Amazon also takes EPUB files, so there is no more need for Mobi files. You can export EPUBs from Scrivener, but to be honest, I find the export and compile functions in Scrivener such a nightmare that I just copy and paste. Life is too short to deal with that mess. I use a program called Vellum, which neatly formats my manuscripts in less than 5 minutes and exports it to targeted versions for each of the ebook platforms. For example, Nook is still on the EPUB 2 standard, so your nice EPUB for the other platforms won't be accepted. Vellum takes care of this for me, and I've never had a problem with the files not being accepted. Vellum is Mac only, but it's truly magic. There are apps for Windows, including Calibre and Jutoh, and a new app that's being written by the same guy who gives us Publisher Rocket, and is called Atticus. At this time, in August 2021, it is still in beta, but presumably this will change in the future. You can also upload Word files to Amazon and some other retailers, although I don't really recommend that you do this, because you have to manually create your own table of contents, and the formatting can be dicey. Alternatively, you can also use the free format tool at Draft2Digital. You do not have to distribute your books through them. Before I had Vellum, I used to use this a fair bit for advanced reader copies and short stories. It works perfectly well. When you get to actually publishing your book, I don't think any writer with 2 or more books can do without Bookfunnel. The very basic function of Bookfunnel is that it delivers books to your readers. For example, if you want to give away free copies, Bookfunnel takes care of this. Of course, you can also attach the files to your email and have half of them get caught up in spam filters and then spend a lot of time answering emails about how to locate these files, how to sideload them, and how to get them onto this or that device that you don't actually have and know nothing about. Believe me, you only need to have spent half a day emailing back and forth with a particularly determined, technologically challenged, difficult reader to know the value of Bookfunnel, because if the reader downloads through the Bookfunnel website, they take care of all this customer service. Bookfunnel is a very versatile platform and does a lot of other things. For example, you can take part in group promotions. These promotions will be hosted on the Bookfunnel site, and readers can download each book into their Bookfunnel library and get them onto the devices of their choice. This is a great way to get people familiar with a process so that you can then sell books direct to them, which is a service Bookfunnel also offers. If you have integrated Bookfunnel with your mailing list provider, the reader's emails will go straight to your mailing list. They will also allow you to host audiobooks and have a function for what they call other media. This includes sound files, including this podcast. You can also distribute music, special spoken messages to your readers, and much more. There really isn't enough time to explain all the wonderful things you can do with Bookfunnel. There are other apps that allow you to run promotions and get people onto your newsletter, and they include StoryOrigin, MyBookCave, and Prolific Works. Of course, you will first need an email provider. Whichever one is the best depends on what you want from them. I think it is not very helpful that people insist that you should only have the best, implying the most expensive service. A lot of those services have bells and whistles you will never use. So before you choose an email service, think about what sort of things you are likely to use. At some point I may do another episode on this, so for now I'm just going to leave you with a notion that you need one of these services and that the amount of stuff they offer and how much they charge varies wildly, and that getting the most expensive service, because quality, is not necessarily going to help you. You need to figure out what you're going to use it for. Of course, you also need a website, and it's up to you whether you choose to build or pay someone to build a WordPress website, which isn't really all that hard, or whether you go with one of the ready-made solutions like Wix or Squarespace or Weebly. One thing you need to be careful of is to make sure that your website provider integrates with the other services you are using, such as Bookfunnel and your email list provider. On the one hand, I caution you against going all out on the quality argument and paying a huge amount for all the bells and whistles you don't need. On the other hand, I would also like to caution you against going with the cheapest, most basic and newest email list provider simply because they are unlikely to have integration set up with all the other services you use. Having to manually copy across email addresses because your website doesn't directly feed into your email list provider is a ginormous pain in the butt, and you don't want to do it. As for the names of some of the email list provider companies, most writers at this point in time use either Mailchimp or Mailerlite, and some may use a service called Convertkit. Many of these companies have a free tier where you can just sign up and try to see if you like the service. Then you're probably going to need a program that handles graphics. Even if, as likely, you get someone else to design your covers, you're going to need graphics for ads. It's great if you can do the very basic stuff yourself, so you don't have to go back to your book cover designer and pay them each time you want a different graphic. I subscribe to Photoshop, but that's because I also design my own covers and do other graphic stuff. There is a service that's targeted to books and making ads for books. It's called Bookbrush. I haven't used it, but I've heard good things about it. Many people also use Canva. Both these programs have templates where you can just drop your book covers with pre-designed text boxes and fonts so that the end result looks pleasing, even if you don't have a graphic design bone in your body. Then you will probably need some sales tracking, ad tracking, and accounting software. There are all kinds of solutions for this, but I have found the best method a good old spreadsheet. I use Google Sheets because, remember, I don't have Microsoft Office. Google Sheets is an Excel clone and does all the things that a writer needs that Excel also does. In fact, when I'm looking for how to do something on Google Sheets, I often find myself on websites that explain how to do the same thing in Excel. I just copy the function and it works perfectly. Google Sheets is free. There are a number of advantages that I think make writing your own accounting and sales tracking spreadsheet worthwhile. In the first place, you can tailor it to exactly what you want to know. You don't have to wait for someone else to finally respond to your feature request, and that is if they are going to respond at all. New venues for sales open up all the time, and sales tracking software doesn't always keep up. If you want your sales tracking to be complete, you need to track your sales everywhere, not just on the 5 or 6 most popular platforms and in the most popular format, which is probably ebook only. If you regularly sell print books at cons, if you sell from your own website, if you sell through niche websites like Drive-Thru Fiction, you will appreciate that you can just start a new worksheet in your spreadsheet for the venue in question. But it also puts you much closer to the data. When I finally gave the sales tracking software I was using the shove for these and other reasons, I wrote my own spreadsheet. I learned some things about my sales that are saving me at least $2,000 a year, and that made me realize things about my books that I would never have known otherwise. Since writing your own spreadsheet is not for everyone, so there are some programs that do this for you. There is a wonderful program called Scribecount that looks really nice. There is also a program called Booktrakr, but it requires your passwords to all the retailer sites. Then there is Book Report, which plugs right into your Amazon dashboard, but it's Amazon only. Apart from the fact that most of these programs don't do absolutely all venues where you can sell books, they can be buggy because of the fickle nature of retailers' sites and their APIs. Some may ask for your passwords or may work better with some browsers than others. You may also want a link shortening or redirecting service. You would use this on your website or in ads to direct readers to the platform or country of their choice. There are services that are subscription-based that will take care of this for you, but you might just use the WordPress plugin Prettylinks, or you can use Books to Read, which is a service provided by Draft2Digital for free. Again, you do not have to have an account with them. So, there you go. These are the basic services that I use and I would recommend to other writers. Thank you for listening to the Happy Writer Show. Check out links and information about other episodes on my website at pattyjansen.com, where you can also find out about my books. You can support me by subscribing to the show or on Patreon at patreon.com/pattyjansen.